Ladies and gentlemen, I am with, good morning, by the way, it's 6 a.m. where I'm at. I am with world famous hypnotist extraordinaire. He does a whole whack of stuff, and I'm not going to go through all of it because Jonathan can explain it way better than I can. Jonathan, give me a 3-minute intro about who you are, what you do. You only get 3 minutes. Go.
Shit, right. It says 12 o'clock on my clock, so I'll use that as a guide. Starting now. 3, 2, 1. Born on the 13th of August 1975 into a show business family whilst travelling with Gandhi Circus here in England. Made my stage debut age 3 as Flat the Clown. By the age of 8, I was doing professionally a magic act because I'd used the money I'd earned from doing the clowning. By the time I was 12, I transitioned into doing mind reading, mentalism, and fortune telling at psychic fairs and stuff. By the time I was 14, I became the youngest ever certified clinical hypnotherapist member of the Association of Professional Hypnotherapists and Psychotherapists here in England. That was in 1989. I've got 2 minutes left, apparently. In 1990, aged 15, I did my first paid comedy stage hypnosis shows. So I've been doing hypnotherapy since 1989, stage hypnosis shows for money since 1990. In January 1993, some 32 years ago now, I made my national television debut as a hypnotist. I'd already been on television before as a magician, but as a hypnotist alongside Peter Powers, the hypnotist, on a cult Channel 4 television show called The Word, in a battle of the hypnotists, which not surprisingly Peter won, and so he should have done because he'd already been at it for a decade. But it was close, apparently, from the voting, and that kick-started things, and I was just incredibly fortunate to then get more and more TV, radio, newspaper publicity. I've got a minute left. Unfortunately, British national newspaper The Sun in 1994 ran an article that gave the impression I hypnotised women into having sex against their will. This was not true. I never actually said that, and that has now been proven as of November 2024 in the fact that I finally got to take newsgroup newspapers who published that, and another defamatory article in 1998 where they accused me of being a drug smuggling, counterfeit money supply, newsy gun salesman pimp. In November 2024, newsgroup newspapers made me a substantial financial settlement to keep me out of court on what they call a Part 36 offer, to silence me, to stop me presenting my evidence of them lying, drugging my drinks, creating false evidence, and trying to ruin my career, which they did to some degree. But I feel vindicated now. I've got like 20 seconds left. And on the 20th of January this year, 2025, the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, yes, I'm name dropping royalty, and Lord Tom Watson, a former Labour MP of the British government, go to the High Court, Royal Courts of Justice in England against Rupert Murdoch's newsgroup newspapers. And although they've tried to silence me by making me this Part 36 offer, that doesn't stop me from giving a witness statement to Prince Harry, which I have done. That'll probably just get read out. I probably won't get called into court, but I may do. In any event, at some point, I'll get mentioned in the media because Prince Harry was also targeted by Rupert Murdoch's fake sheikh, Mazza Mahmood, in an attempt to frame him with lies and nonsense. So that's kind of a brief overview. I do stage hypnosis, hypnotherapy, mentalism, magic. I do the lot because ultimately, when you understand it all, and that's not meant to sound negative towards anyone, but when you truly understand how and why hypnosis works, you then come to the realization that stage hypnosis is hypnotherapy. The only difference between hypnotherapy and stage hypnosis is the size of your audience. Generally, you don't have an audience for hypnotherapy. All of the participants are being undertaking therapy, whether it's one-on-one or a group of people. Whereas with the stage hypnosis show, some of the people are on stage, some in the audience, and I would argue it's actually the people in the audience that are hypnotized, if hypnosis exists at all, because they're under this strange delusion that the people on stage are in some special state that means that you, the puppet master, tell them what to do and they do it, when in truth, as the bulk of evidence out there shows, there is no special state, and there's nothing you can get people to do under hypnosis that you can't get them to do through other means while they're fully conscious. Sorry, that went to 3.5 minutes.
That's okay, Alex. There's a reason I gave you a time limit, by the way. I've watched a lot of your interviews, and sometimes you're like all of us. You go off on a tangent, right?
Oh
But
yeah, too
I,
right.
I like to keep her focused. I do want to talk to you. I know you're very passionate about the lawsuit, and that was the best explanation about what you have talked about that I've heard. By the way, so I'm very glad we kept that short.
I'm less emotionally. I'm still naffed off about what
Yes.
they did to me, but I'm less so because I feel massively vindicated. Like they've not accepted responsibility. They made a Part 36 offer. What it means is they offered me more money than the judge would likely award me if it went to court. And under British law, the farce of it means that if I was to proceed to court and win, which I would have done with the evidence I've got that's on circusofthemind.net, the judge would have awarded me a sum of money. But because I turned down an amount that was greater than what the judge would have awarded me, I'd have been liable for News Group newspapers' legal costs, which would have run in excess of £10 million sterling. So basically, they've weaponised Part 36 offers to silence over 1,600 people to date in what is known as the phone hacking scandal that is known about worldwide. It didn't just happen in England. Phone hacking happened around the world.
So what they were really doing is basically a forced non-disclosure then, where you're not really allowed to talk about it because you got to pay.
I can't say how much they paid me. I can't say that. I can't say what is in the private letter of apology that they are giving me, but I can say that they're giving me a private letter of apology. And, like all parties who say that they don't accept any liability, like all nice, innocent people do, they paid me a substantial, big chunk of money and are giving me a private letter of apology, as they've done with over 1,600 other people to date. If what I'd accused them of wasn't true,
they wouldn't give you money.
it would be a lot cheaper for them to go to court, even if it cost them money for the one case. Go to court, prove they hadn't illegally hacked people's phones, prove that they hadn't, their journalist Mazza Mahmood and his team hadn't drugged people to make them compliant, prove that they hadn't edited tapes and spliced them to create false narratives, prove that they hadn't printed things that people hadn't said. It turns out through the process of disclosure in court, I can't say what they gave me, what was on it exactly, but what I can say is they gave me tapes and audios and things that they had to through the process of disclosure. And my legal team examined them forensically against the News of the World article that went out in 1998 that accused me of being a drug smuggling, counterfeit money supplying, Uzi gun salesman pimp of underage girls. They even went that far, right?
Yeah.
They quoted me as saying things like, yeah, I can get you 12-year-old girls. I never, ever said that. Never said it. Forensically analysed by a legal team, what are on those tapes compared to what they published, there is not a single thing in the article they printed that I actually said in the way they printed it. It's complete and utter defamatory fabrication. But in 1998, I did not have access to the hundreds of thousands of pounds that would be required to take legal action against them. And they knew they could get away with this. Even with major celebrities who were millionaires, they couldn't afford to take on people that could happily spend £10 million on there. It didn't happen. In more recent years, thanks to what is known as the claimants group, a team of people who got together and found solicitors who found a way within the law to be able to offer kind of no win, no fee representation. It's a bit more complicated than that. It's not like normal no win, no fee, and it's got to have legal insurance in place. You've got to have enough evidence that the insurance company are likely to take you on, and all these things, which in itself shows, the legal insurance companies were prepared to take me on in the same way people don't risk that kind of money, okay, unless there's strong ironclad evidence. Now, even if it is, I'd already made public 95% of that evidence. The 5% that I hadn't and won't be able to, because it's covered by this agreement, but it will be used in my forthcoming further appeals to get my wrongful convictions overturned. The 95% of other evidence that formed the basis of my claim, I'd already made public on a website, circusofthemind.net. So because it was already in the public domain, I can't be stopped from leaving it there. So if you want to see why they effectively silenced me with a Part 36 offer, go to circusofthemind.net, look at the evidence, check it out for yourself, and you'll realise, hang on a minute, all these rumours I've heard over the years about Jonathan Royle, or in his former stage name, Alex Leroy, being this guy who hypnotised, who bragged apparently about hypnotising women against their will into having sex. Never said it. It's been proven now. I never said it. A journalist at the Sun newspaper claimed that I'd said that, and claimed that a woman had said I'd done that to her. The truth is, as I can prove, and have done now, the lady that spoke to the media in 1994 was an actress I paid to speak to them. And the storyline she gave them was that she asked me, during the course of a consensual, mutual relationship, she asked me to make her believe that I was her favourite film star and that she had the best sex of her life, which actually didn't happen. This was a complete made-up narrative for publicity. But they printed it up as though she was hypnotised against her will and woke up shocked that this had happened, effectively labelling me a rapist, which is both defamatory, it's beyond defamatory, it's laughable. If there was any truth in it, why was I never, investigated by the police? The media, sadly, have got away for way too long with printing whatever they want because people couldn't afford to get justice. And sadly, that's still the case because the level of proof you need to provide of your innocence is so high because the insurance companies obviously don't want to risk their money to guarantee a case. Absolutely. The level is so high that for most people, it's next to impossible. But that in itself, from a purely selfish point of view, shows how high my level of evidence always has been. And has proven to be. So all those rumours you heard about me hypnotising women against their will, not true. I never actually said it. And in any interviews that followed, where I had no choice but to become the British bad boy of hypnosis, otherwise I'd go out of business, because for a long while, obviously, no one had booked me for a family show. Years later, they did. But back then in the 90s, suddenly that was it. So I always said it was consensual because that was the closest thing to the truth. And obviously, I couldn't go on TV shows at the time and go, actually, I paid an actress to talk nonsense to the media, because that could have also been damaging. Now, in the course of this lawsuit, I had to put that in my claim and admit the fact that it was a paid actress and all these other things. But hey, 31 years on from the first bullshit story they did, and 27 years on from the 98 News of the World one, it doesn't matter now. People can know it was paid actresses, it was nonsense, and the rest of it was fabricated, defamatory lies made by the media that they finally had to pay the price for.
So I do have a question, Jonathan. When that was happening to you, you were talking mid-90s is when you really started hypnotizing people. That was the heyday of when hypnosis shows were really starting to go wild, and there was bookings all the time. I started in 2002, and I picked up the tail end of that, where you could pick up easily 100 gigs a year, and you really didn't have to work that hard.
Oh wow! No, I mean that's nothing in England.
Yeah, exactly.
From 90. It sort of started, I'd say, towards the end of 1992. And it ran until early 94. Now, I'll come back to 94 in a minute. But for that period of time, certainly during 93, there were times where I could do up to 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 35. Yeah, up to 18 shows a week.
Yeah.
Could I be doing a pub show, a working men's club, a nightclub, sometimes another nightclub? There were days where there were 4 shows. Other times it was 2 shows a day. That's not happened since in England.
Yes, it has disappeared. And do you think, as well, let's call you an old timer because you've earned it. Do you think that's ever going to come back to our industry?
No, and for various reasons. Certainly not in England. I mean, the reason it stopped in England is that in late 1993, a lady called Sharon Taban died a number of hours after participating in a stage hypnosis show conducted by a postman by day, but stage hypnotist by night, by the name of Andrew Vincent. And her mother rightfully was distressed, as she would be, Margaret Harper, and she set up what she called CASH, C-A-S-H, the Campaign Against Stage Hypnotists, because she believed that because the stage hypnotists woke everyone up at the end saying that they've got 10,000 volts of electricity up their backside, and that a daughter had a morbid fear of electricity, that this was why many hours later she'd died in her sleep. Now, the Home Office investigated this, a full investigation was done, and the coroners concluded that hypnosis played no part in the death of Sharon Taban whatsoever. Okay, let's make that clear right now. However, the media took it as a witch hunt. And so not only did you have them in January 1994 lying about me saying I hypnotise women against their will, which has now been proven to be bullshit because they paid me a massive sum of money. But you then had them deciding to slag off stage hypnosis in general and say that it should be banned because of this campaign against stage hypnotists. And that is what killed, part of what killed stage hypnosis in England. Now, that when the Home Office then said there was no connection whatsoever, you could say, well, over a period of time, it should start to get better. And it kind of did. However, we'd also had, and no disrespect to Paul McKenna, and no disrespect given some things people will be aware of, past history of Andrew Newton, the guy who claims to have taught Paul McKenna. But, in 1993, ITV, the Channel 3 television station in England, broadcast, was it 93 or 92? I think it was 93. Yeah, 93. Broadcast a 1-hour television special, which was the August Bank Holiday weekend, if I remember correctly. Forgive me if I've got my date out a few months. And that was the Andrew Newton Hypnotic Experience. And it was the first ever proper full-length comedy hypnosis show on TV in England. There'd been hypnosis on telly before as guest balls, but this was a 1-hour special. And as you would expect of someone of his experience who'd been filling theatres for years, Andrew did a fantastic show, and ITV wanted to commission it as a full series, 6 half-hour shows, and maybe do it over a number of years and whatnot. And just as they commissioned this, ITV, who were owned by, I can't remember who they were owned by at the time, but the franchise was bought out. And the people who bought the franchise had, as I understand it, and I could be slightly wrong, so as I remember and understand it, had business links on some level or some kind of loyalty to Harvey Goldsmith Productions, a theatrical agency in London that represented a young up-and-coming stage hypnotist who was a radio DJ called Paul McKenna. And the long story cut short is that they did commission a stage hypnosis series because they were convinced by the 1-hour special that was broadcast, the Andrew Newton Hypnotic Experience, that it would work as a television format. But it ended up being the hypnotic world of Paul McKenna. And the rest, as they say, is history in terms of everyone's heard of McKenna, more so than Andrew Newton in terms of the public. Now, what that also meant, though, is, and Andrew's made mention of this on his own websites and stuff, that ultimately, because then it was seen so much on television over a number of series, that the mystique, the true mystique of stage hypnosis, gone. And now we move forward to the day and age now where you've got, and I know there's a few exceptions to what I'm about to say, so I apologise to some people, but we have got a bunch of dickheads who don't have a fucking clue, who basically have no talent, because a trained chimpanzee can do a hypnosis show.
Okay, let's be honest here, Alex. Hypnosis takes little skill. You have to have the courage to walk on stage, say, I'm going to hypnotize you, and you're done. If
precisely,
that's it. It's like going to the doctor's office. They're wearing the jacket. You used to trust them, or you read the newspaper, you trust it. That's how hypnosis works. That's the basics of it.
in a nutshell. And it's all the other stuff that makes the difference between being a hypnotist and being an entertainer.
Exactly.
And there's a third category, being a safe entertainer. Because there's a lot of people that I would say actually fall in the category of they managed to get to the point of being an entertainer, not just a hypnotist. But fucking hell, they need to learn about safety, duty of care, and they're doing stuff that frankly is dangerous and they don't even realize it.
Yeah.
And there's more and more of them doing so-called street hypnosis. As I like to call it, public masturbation for their own ego. Now, I know there's an argument that can be used for publicity to get you bums on seats for stuff, and that you can make money from people watching stuff on social media in this day and age, which you can. Influencers can make more money than people filling box offices in theatres if they've got enough followers. And there is a tiny handful of people, about half a dozen, that I'm not even going to mention names of, that have got such a social media following that they will be earning a very nice income indeed from their ego fest public masturbatory hypnosis clips.
Yeah.
But they are still, but in the general, I've seen some of these clips and they haven't got a fucking clue about health and safety or duty of care. Or if they do, they're being purposely incompetent. It's one or the other. They're either purposely being incompetent, which becomes a criminal offence, or they are just incompetent and have not studied it, which then is professional negligence. Yeah. In any event, if they do have insurance in place, which most of them probably don't, but if they do, they've invalidated it, because all insurance policies, if you read the small print, will have a section that says it's only valid if you can prove that you've put in place all relevant health and safety and duty of care. Yeah.
The thing about insurance as well, it depends where you are. The stuff in the States doesn't necessarily cover a person for what they think they're covered for, and the stuff in Canada is general liability insurance. It's not
same in England. Couldn't agree. It's the same pretty much everywhere.
And general liability, all it means is that they fall off the stairs, you're covered. But if it's while you are working with them, you're not. And it's
exactly crazy. Or even if it says that it covers you for public liability while they're under trance or hypnotized, whichever term they use, even if it does that, what it most often means is that it covers if they break their leg, a physical injury, public liability. What it doesn't cover for, which is what you need a policy that clearly states professional indemnity, is if the person claims psychological harm or damage, like happened years ago to Paul McKenna, someone falsely claiming to think that they were living like an 8-year-old after the show. Yeah. Paul quite rightly won that case, and Paul fortunately had the right kind of insurance policy that clearly covered for any claims of potential psychological harm or damage, which comes under professional indemnity. Currently in England, there is no, well, there are stage hypnotists with policies that expire this year, okay, and I've got one that expires at the end of May, that clearly state they cover for public liability and professional indemnity. But the company that provided that has said they will not be reinsuring people, renewing the policies. Yep. British Actors Equity Association, that used to, all members get a public liability policy, but it doesn't cover you for while people are in trance. But they used to sell a top up. But now they've changed insurance companies. They're not offering that top up. So I approached the insurance company that did offer that top up, and they say they're not going to be doing it anymore at this second in time, unless somebody can contact me and show me otherwise. I'd love to be proven wrong. But the last time I discussed this on Hypno News with the late Jim Kellner and Grant Saunders, Grant kindly inboxed me and said, there's this insurance company, but I've checked them out. Those policies only cover for public liability. They do not cover you for while people are hypnotized, for potential claims of psychological damage, malpractice, or professional indemnity. So whilst the policies Grant kindly mentioned to me will be enough to appease 99% of bookers who want to see that you've got a insurance policy, and whilst 99% of council licensing districts in England that you have to apply to here under the 1952 Hypnotism Act will grant a license, because the truth is most of them will grant a license just showing your equity card insurance policy that doesn't even cover hypnosis. That's fine. It's fine until some wagon chaser claims they've been psychologically damaged. Then you find you're not covered by the insurance policy, and you are going to end up bankrupt, having to sell your house because you won't be covered for legal protection.
And I want to make a note on this. A lot of people think this can never happen to them. But
it's happened. You might not hear about it, but I'm telling you now, I act as an expert witness in cases and behind the scenes based on the stuff that's in my transparency template video set, which is not a pitch, because I've now bought the videos of that free of charge. I used to sell them, but I bought them free of charge to try and help the industry be safer, onto my Celebrity Hypnotist YouTube channel. You go to Celebrity Hypnotist on YouTube, click on playlist and find the one that says Stage Hypnosis. And in there are 4 video files with the name, the transparency template in them. And they will teach you about the health and safety duty of care. Now, it talks about England and Europe a lot, but duty of care and health and safety laws are pretty much universal. If you do things the way that are taught on the transparency template, it will enable you to perform legally, lawfully, licensed where needed, and it's not just England where that applies. There's other countries like Sweden you have to get permission to do stage hypnosis, or there's other places. Or if there's places that have an outright ban, then you can perform in a manner like Kreskin did, the late Kreskin, who left us recently. And he always challenged, he proved, he categorically, like me, says hypnosis doesn't exist in the way that some people and some laws define it. And he put money up and no one was ever able successfully to claim it. And that's because it doesn't exist. It's bullshit. Anyone who says hypnosis is a special state doesn't understand it enough. Anyone who brings out the brain scans and goes, these prove that something different happens to your brain, missed the point of that you get the same brain scan results just by telling someone to close their eyes and talking to them, giving them a suggestion without any formal hypnotic trance induction, meaning that formal hypnotic trance induction is not required. It's the same fucking state, doesn't it? Suggestion correctly expressed is hypnosis. Hypnosis doesn't exist, only in the mind of the believer. Now, that's all well and good, but when there's a law like 1952 Hypnotism Act that also says hypnosis can include suggestion intended to influence people, you're a bit screwed. Unless, of course, you realize it also says it does not prohibit self-hypnosis, the giving of hypnotherapy, except at or in connection with an entertainment. So you can't go, well, this is a hypnotherapeutic teaching show of self-hypnosis, because obviously it's clearly largely focused on entertainment. But in Section 5 of the UK Act, nothing is prohibited for scientific or research purposes. So let's say you were to get people to fill in a questionnaire at the start of the show as they're coming in, or at the end when they participated, make it quite clear you're going to publish this research and it's being videoed as well, and you're going to make the video clips available by QR code inside the book, where you're going to print the results of the next 3 years research into the effects of entertaining hypnotic suggestions to people in the process of teaching them self-hypnosis. This is a very brief overview. It has to be done more precisely than I'm saying here.
Yes.
I explain it in transparency, and I explain it in black and white in my book, The Encyclopedia of Stage Hypnosis, NLP and Hypnotherapy by Jonathan Royle, that you can get on Amazon for like £20 sterling, or about 27 bucks. It's got to be to the letter of the law, and you've also got to have the right wording on every ticket, poster, leaflet, your website. Everywhere has got to be consistent, because otherwise they can trip you up. But if you can show, and I'm just reading my poster here, it says on it, volunteers must be aged 18 or over, participate of their own free will, and may leave the stage at any time during this demonstration of hypnotic style phenomena presented strictly for scientific and research purposes only. Hypnotic style phenomena. Makes it sound like it's hypnosis, but hypnotic style means it's not. I also have on the top of one of my posters, it clearly says there's no such thing as a comedy hypnotist. Now, people interpret that on a picture, where there's a picture of someone in a chair out like that and me doing this.
Absolutely.
They interpret that as the old thing, like you see a good film, a good comedy film, you might go, I'll tell you what, there's nothing like a Steve Martin film to make you laugh. That's the context with that visual imagery, that they read there's no such thing as a comedy hypnotist, the header on my poster. But in actual fact, it blatantly says there's no such thing as comedy hypnotist. On the bottom, it says hypnotic style phenomena. It's blatantly telling them this is not hypnosis. And my pre-talk includes telling them I'm going to teach them how to hypnotize themselves.
Yep.
Everything, and the video of the show would then be further proof that I didn't hypnotize them. They consensually took part in research, which is a question. There's a lot more to it. It takes hours to explain, to do it properly within the law. which is what transparency template and the book teach. But those things can also be used to protect you in other countries in the world. And I say that as someone who's, well, I did my first hypnosis show in 1990. And in all that time, and I've done, I've lost track of how many shows around the world. I have only ever applied for permission or a license to perform 3 times. And the reason for that is, even though you're supposed to have one in England, it's because I've been still performing legally and lawfully within the law in a safe manner, in a way where I've been insured because I've not needed stage hypnosis insurance, although I currently have that as well. Belts and braces. When it's available, I have it. When it's not, I don't need it because of the way I do things. I've never hypnotized a person on stage because hypnosis doesn't exist.
So we're at 30 minutes, by the way. Do you have a couple extra minutes, or?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm not in a rush. I'm all right.
Okay. So I'm going to
Let's
be
give them
honest
some value, because let me blatantly say here, later on, Jesse's going to tell you there'll be a link above or below this video to book a ticket for the Performing Hypnosis Summit. And if you can't make it to Vegas at the end of January, don't worry, because you can lock in the price now and attend online and watch the stuff live. Or if you don't want to get up in the middle of the night because you're in a country where the time zones don't mix, don't worry. You lock in the price now and you get the recordings of everything. That's and right. Yes, I'm one of those speakers, and I'm going to have the most controversial 90 minutes or whatever long it is there, because basically I'm going to totally prove beyond any doubt hypnosis is bullshit, doesn't exist, and anyone who tells you differently doesn't know what they're on about. So yes, I know that will offend some of the speakers at the PHS Summit, because some of them blatantly believe hypnosis is a special state. Well, you're wrong. You need to study my stuff and wake up. But yeah, let's give them some value. Fire away, anything.
Actually, I want to talk to you about you've gotten a lot of shit over the years because
largely because people thought I was a rapist, a drug dealer, or an Uzi gun salesman, pimp of underage girls who supply, which got me wrongfully convicted for delivery of counterfeit coins. Convictions that are now unsafe. I've already been to the Court of Appeal once, and sadly, they didn't give me permission to appeal out of time. But I've now got even more evidence, and I will be going back there in due course with my barrister. They're going to have to overturn my convictions. It's just a matter of time. Because otherwise the Court of Appeal kind of got to turn around and go, you come to the conclusion, why would newsgroup newspapers pay him that much money and give him a private letter of apology? And why have all these other people that were targeted by the fake Sheikh Mazza Mahmood also been paid large sums of money and there'll be stuff coming out in the Prince Harry case in court from the 20th of January in the Royal Courts of Justice, which the world media will report on and which I'm one of the witnesses for. We'll just go, hang on, there's a bit of mass cover-up here, and there has been, because we've now got evidence that's come out through disclosure that the Police and Crown Prosecution Service in England knew in 1994 that Mahmood could not and should not ever be relied upon as a witness of truth in any court case. He'd already committed or been found, by them to lie and fabricate evidence. And yet, despite they communicated with each other saying this, after the collapse of a court trial in 1994, they continued to prosecute people based on his lies until the collapse of the British pop star Talisa Kontos-Stavlos's alleged drugs trial in July 2014, when finally he was unmasked as a liar on the stand. But to this day, the police and CPS have still not disclosed to us what they knew. We found it out by accident because for some reason, and you explain this doesn't make sense. Newsgroup newspapers, when they had to disclose stuff during the MITVille, the mobile telephone voicemail interception litigation, so-called phone hacking trials, gave documents over that amongst them were found communications between the Metropolitan Police and the Crown Prosecution Service communicating with each other, saying that Mazza Mahmood could not and should not be relied upon as a witness of truth. What are they doing? What were they doing in newsgroup newspapers' archives? That in itself...
That's a scary thing, Alex. Like, if you think about that, what all has been covered up, that's crazy. So, when you talk to Joe Beth, I'm going to change the subject a little bit. You talk about safety, and you kind of went off about it, and that's okay. But I'm going to ask you not to.
Okay.
I want to talk to you specifically why you have the attitude you have towards the safety aspect. And I know it comes from a good place. I know that you're not just protecting yourself anymore. You're trying to start to protect the industry. And I can see that deep down. And a lot of people get off put. This is what I was saying before, because you're rambunctious, let's say. We'll use that as a word.
Also,
And
to a
you're
degree,
very
a lot of them still believe a load of the bullshit. So they think, why should we listen to that person that's a drug smuggling, counterfeit money supplying, news and gun salesman, pimp of underage girls that hypnotize women against the will for sex? When none of that's true, and it's been proven as such. I've been vindicated. Go and look at circusofthemind.net. So when you push all that out of the way, perhaps you'll think differently. Why am I so passionate? In a nutshell, it's that if people were to go on my website, magicalguru.com, and they click on the tab television and radio shows, there are clips there going back to 1994 when I was the main hypnotist who appeared on all the primetime British television shows and also around Europe defending stage hypnosis when this campaign against stage hypnotists was running. And I've lived through it. I've seen an industry where I, as I said before, could be doing 18 shows in a week, go to doing none for a short period of time. And then because I knew about marketing, advertising, publicity, promotion, because I was firmly already established in the industry, I was able to go back to doing, 4 or 5 shows a week. But to be honest, these days, if I wanted to be performing all the time for reasonably, what most people will consider reasonably good fees, 4 or 5 times a week within England would be possible if you put the work in. However, personally, to me, I've got so many forms of passive income, and as I've mentioned on social media recently, I'm now disabled, and I do that in the speech marks because it ain't going to stop me doing stuff. I just might end up having to one day sit down a lot more on stage like Jonathan Chase had to do in his wheelchair because I now walk with a stick.
With Jonathan, he still did a great job even in his wheelchair. He was doing fine. So, and I know that sucks, and age gets.
So I've seen it, yes. And I've lived it, and I did for years. My these days, Patrick Picard. I always
Belgian, right? He's the Belgian guy.
Belgian guy, yeah. He has a logo where he's got them across the back of 2 chairs or supports catalepsy. Yeah. And it's like his thing. Well, it's not his thing. It was my thing way before it was his. I was the person who, literally going back to 1990 and all through the 90s, and I've done it ever since. So I've been doing it way longer than Patrick, no disrespect. But there were people doing it before me. At one time, Andrew Newton used to end his show with catalepsy. There's photos out there of him doing it. But Andrew's now turned around and gone, shouldn't do it because it's potentially dangerous. My word on it is you shouldn't do it if you believe for 1 minute hypnosis is genuine. Definitely don't do catalepsy because you'll be doing it wrong because it's got naff all to do with hypnosis. If you are
not even just that one, it's all of them. It's every test from this one to all of them.
Oh yeah,
they're all bullshit. Everybody.
Precisely.
I mean, they're all real. They're all real. We have to.
So there's danger. I'm so lucky. I never had an accident with catalepsy, and I've probably done it more in the past. What we on now? 1990, 2010, 20. In the past 35 years, I've probably done it more than anyone. Well, probably not in the past 3 to 5 years because I've done way less shows because of health issues and not needing to. But my advice to other people is don't do it. The only time I even then it would have to be under controlled circumstances, maybe for a television show, but with a stooge, and by that I mean somebody you've trained yourself. there's ways to minimize the danger, but you know what? The fact is, it still has elements of danger that cannot be mitigated. You might think everything's fine there at the time, in the same way as you might think going up to the row of people and going, sleep, 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 and knocking them on the shoulder and then suddenly going like that against the person sat on the chair next to them. It's fine. It might seem fine at the end, but you know what? I spoke to experts in the back and physiology, and being jarred like that, even gently, can cause things to manifest months or even years later. And whilst it's highly unlikely the person would ever be able to trace it back enough to sue you, that isn't a reason to carry on doing it.
No.
You should still, surely, as an ethical human being, if there is a potential, even tiny chance of knocking somebody like that and going to sleep, could later cause them, don't do it. That is why, you know, I used to chuck people on the floor. Not anymore. I will be vocal. Stage Hypnosis University, the videos they put out, people falling on each other. Ridiculous incompetence, encouraging people to potentially harm people. And if they're fine on the night, it doesn't mean that something won't show up as an issue later. These days, I use, more often than not, what people call the light and heavy hands test, or the balloon and book. Left hand is going to be the leather-bound library books, because the letter L for left. Leather-bound library books going lower, it's all L. On the right hand, which is palm downwards, is letter R for the red, letter R. Helium balloons that are going to rise into the air, letter R. And basically, it's because by doing it that way, after a certain period of time, the tendons in here get tired and the left arm will naturally go down. So whether they respond to suggestion or not, there will be a gap. That's the bullshit that is the light and heavy hands test that can be used as a convincer to make people think that you say things, they think it becomes reality, at which point when they believe that, they become compliant and they stop questioning things. But then once they're in this sort of position with their eyes closed, I will tell them that in a few moments time I'm going to tap them gently on the back of the hands. When I do, it will not bother them, worry or concern you in any way, shape or form. In fact, it will merely serve as a sign and a signal to help you relax more completely, more rapidly, more beautifully relaxed. Is on 3, 2, and they're waiting for number 1, but actually I touched them before number 1, so it's unexpected, but it's a gentle unexpected. And I tap them just with fingertips very lightly, and I move the position of the hands so the left ends up down where the right was, the right ends up where the left, and then one comes across the body very, very gently. This is all as gently as possible so it cannot have long-term effects. And because so much unexpected stuff happens at once, it causes sensory overload, which in itself therefore causes disorientation and confusion, and you could argue critical faculty, analytical area, executive function bypass, if you want to talk that nonsense bullshit. But it makes them think, what the hell's going on? This feels weird. And they come to that moment of rationalized conclusion in their mind in a split second of, it feels weird. Hypnosis must feel weird. I'm hypnotized. That's what's really going on. And the moment they believe that, arguably they are, because hypnosis exists only in the mind of the believer. But it is so, so gentle. And this can be done with people sat down. There's no throwing them around. There's no chance of physical injury. And basically, the success rate of people staying under, being compliant, in other words, since using what I dubbed with Robert Temple, the seesaw induction, who came up with this with me, and we've got a product out. But I just, for anyone who's thinking, well, I'm not going to buy something that will put money into the pocket of someone who served prison time, rightfully so, after pleading guilty to, I think it was either 7 or 9, could have been 7 offences of, you know, getting people's nude pictures and selling them for cryptocurrency and all that.
Who did that? Was it Robert?
Yeah, Robert Temple. He got jailed for that. He pled guilty. He pled guilty for it. You tap his name in Google, imprisoned, you'll find there's no question of, was it a setup? He did it. He admitted to it. All counts. Do not worry, because I bought any rights or intellectual property rights to Rob's contribution to the seesaw induction. I bought back in 2008. So he's never earned a penny off it since, and he won't do. So that it should not put you off getting the seesaw inductions download training of what is, yes, it will make me a few quid, but it is the best induction on the planet. It's the most reliable. And above all else, here's the key thing. is the safest, gentlest, and the percentage of people who at the end of it end up at some point opening their eyes and wanting to leave the stage, I've found it next to nil. As long as you've asked the key thing. I just want volunteers to come up, and you don't coerce people onto stage. I'd sooner have 2 or 3 people who willingly came up on stage and have to do a show with 2 or 3 volunteers than feel the need to coerce up a stage full of people, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's something I see people do all the time. Is their opening is not good. Their pre-talk, as we call it, right, is not good, and they can't get volunteers up. I've seen it happen time and time again, and you don't have to have 30 volunteers on stage. In fact,
you shouldn't have. You shouldn't have.
That's part of your talk, is that you're going to tell people how to bring 12 people on stage. This is what you told Jo Beth anyway.
12, yeah.
You're going to teach them how to keep 12 people. And a 12-person show is a full flipping stage, unless you're on some massive stage somewhere.
And the only reason it should end up with less than 12 people, or will end up with less than 12 people, is when there aren't 12 people in the audience. No, that sounds ridiculous, but I showed up for a show, and I put out there videos in my training of stuff where things go wrong from earlier on in my career, so people can learn from it, so they don't make the same mistakes. Or if they encounter them, they know how to deal with it. And years ago, I showed up for a show on the day it said on the contract, but the venue had advertised it for the week after. I got there, and the posters say the week after's date, but I've got the contract they've signed. And basically they said, well, we'll do it tonight. We'll ring around. They rang around. They ended up with 12 people in the building. 12 people. That's all they ended up with. And that included bar staff. So at the beginning, 6 people came up to volunteer, which meant there were 4 audience members and 2 bar staff watching. I managed to keep all 6 of the people. So I was doing a show with the 6 people who volunteered for 4 audience members and 2 bar staff. You can only work with what you've got, but it doesn't matter. They rebooked me another time, and they didn't screw up the date they advertised, so it was a much better show. But
it's funny.
Yeah,
it's funny how those shows work. I once had a show where I had the bar owner, 1 staff member, and the oldest cowboy you've ever seen in your life. And I did a show with the cowboy, and it was funny as all shit. Nobody else showed up, and you still get paid, you still do your job, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. That's what being out there and working is, right? You learn so many different techniques.
Anyone who says that they've not encountered shows where they've ended up with just 1 person on stage and had to do the entire show, or anyone who says they've never had a show where nobody volunteered, is either a blatant liar or just hasn't done enough shows.
Yes.
It's going to happen sooner or later. It doesn't matter how good your contract is, saying that you get paid even if there's no one volunteers. Well, that's fine. My contract said that for decades, and I would still get paid even if nobody volunteers. But if nobody volunteered, these days it would be highly unlikely to happen because of the way I've tweaked. I basically tell the audience in a roundabout way, look, you know what? When you come up here on stage, you're going to be one of the stars of this evening's show. It's about you using your powers of intelligence, imagination, and concentration. I'm kind of like the cinema director, the theatre director, telling you kind of my actors and actresses what to do, and then you allow your imagination to manifest that in the same way you would have done when you were a kid. Now, some people might, when you go back, say, oh, you were just playing along. And you know what? Only you will truly know the truth of the wonderful power of your mind. I blatantly said there, if you play that back, that this is bullshit, and you'll be playing along. But I've also said it in a manner that suggests to the audience that you might get people afterwards saying, oh, you were just playing along, weren't you? But only you on stage who took part will truly know, which makes them still feel as though they'll have some kind of power over the audience and be the special person, and removes all self-blame, shame, guilt, and regret from them, and gives them permission to make an idiot of themselves, because they can always say, no, the hypnotist made me do it.
That's part of my pre-talk. I say, ladies and gentlemen, this is entertainment. That's what it's for. And you know what? Whether hypnosis exists or not, as far as I'm concerned, hypnosis is following any single suggestion. So as long as you're following my suggestions, I'm not going to send you back out in the audience.
Excellent.
And it tells them straight out, yeah, follow suggestions. Technically, you're hypnotized. Good enough.
There's a beautiful technique that Rodney James Piper shared with me in when I interviewed him for my Hypnosis Week podcast, which you can if you go on Celebrity Hypnotist YouTube channel, click on playlist, there's one that says Hypnosis Week podcast, and the interview's in there with Rodney, who'll explain it to you. But in a nutshell, it's that when he does his induction, or rather the deepener, these are terms we use, but I do the seesaw thing, and when the hands are moved around and the head's on the chest, arguably that's the induction done. But then I say to everyone, that's fantastic, everyone. You're using your powers of intelligence, imagination, and concentration so effectively, and as you continue to use your powers of mind so wonderfully, you'll find as I count backwards from 10 down to 1 on each descending number, you'll find that every nerve, fiber, tissue, and muscle in your body, from the tips of your toes to the tips of your fingers, becomes so limp, so loose, so relaxed, so heavy, and so tight in a way that feels right for you. Just allow this to become reality for you in a way that feels right for you is on 10, 9, 8. And I go through effectively what would be classed as a deepener or a second induction. But it looks good theatrically because, and it doesn't bore the audience, because we've already visually had the hands coming apart and then moving around, and then the way it's engineered, it looks as though the body's flopped, and it has, but in a very gentle, safe manner. And then Rodney would say to them, and I do now, thank you, Rodney, this is fucking genius. Something like, okay, some of you now realize as we get to I might do this about the count of 3, so 5, 4, and on 3, I can see right now that each and every one of you, bar 1 or 2 of you, so if you've got like 12 people on stage, you're suggesting maybe one, bar 1 or 2 of you have gone into a lovely, really deep state of hypnosis, and that's fantastic. Now, I'm not going to name and shame the 2 people who I can see that haven't quite got there yet. All I would say is that those 1 or 2 are probably starting to question whether or not you're going to enter hypnosis enough to become one of the stars of this evening's show. And all I would say to you from experience is that it's that moment, those moments when you question whether you're in hypnosis, those moments when you start to question whether or not you will be able to go into hypnosis. They're the moments when, if you carry on questioning, you'll stop yourself from going to that place where you'll feel fantastic and be a star of the show. And what this does is remove resistance if you want to go down the route of believing hypnosis, but it also puts them in a state of mind where it's giving them permission just to, you blatantly can say, so if you just for now play along and pretend to be hypnotized, you'll find that you will go into hypnosis. And it gives you an opportunity to tell them in front of the audience to pretend in a way where the audience don't see it as being anything strange. And then I add to that's Rodney's idea, and then I finish off by putting in what I've published about nearly close to 30 years ago, what I call the 2 are bad subjects ploy, where I say, so those 2 people who are currently questioning, if you do that, you could still be one of the stars of this evening's show. But obviously, if you don't, I may have to send 1 or 2 of you back to the audience. And I don't mean to embarrass you, but if I do, it just means that you've not followed the instructions correctly, kind of thing. Now, we can't, through experience, you get a gauge on how responsive people are, but you can't really know for sure, because you can always be surprised the person you didn't think was going to be a star becomes one, and vice versa. By saying this, everybody on that stage will think, is he or she referring to me?
Yeah.
I better try harder, otherwise I'll be made to look stupid and sent back. But in a way where you've said it, where to the audience, it seems like part of the hypnotic process.
This is almost like the mentalism effect that uses double reality, where the reality
what they call dual reality in mentalism.
Yeah.
That people quite often wrongly forget to credit Kenton Nepper as being one of the big proponents early on of dual reality in mentalism, but also it should be noted, and I'm sure Kenton probably does in some of his works, that it wasn't Kenton who devised dual reality. Dual reality. No, it goes beyond that. The Native American Indians in shamanism and their medicine workers and stuff used linguistic trickery as well, that frankly is dual reality, making different people perceive things, one thing, in different ways. That's why I say it's the audience that are hypnotized, and I'll be covering that heavily at the Performing Hypnosis Summit talk that I'll be doing. Because if you've got an audience of, say, 1,000 people and you've got a dozen people on stage, those 12 people on stage, if they're truly honest, know that they've just played along. Now, they can come to delude themselves to such a point that they believe they've been in some special state, because that's the way they're wired up as human beings, and they don't want to have to admit they just played along, and they like being a child. Their inner child came out. It gave them a perfect excuse. The people who are really deluded are the 900 and, I haven't done the maths, 88 people in the example audience, most of whom think these people on stage are in some special state, and think that when you go sleep and they close their eyes, why do they close their eyes? Because you told them that every time I say sleep, you'll close your eyes, let your heavy head fall forward onto your chest, and you'll instantly re-enter this state. And every time you do, you'll be 100 times deeper, more relaxing, and enjoyable for you. Nod your head if you understand. When they nod their head, they're giving consent right in front of their audience. You're telling them what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, and then saying nod your head if you understand. The audience laugh because they think, oh, their eyes are closed, and they've nodded their head. They're reacting like a zombie. No, they're not. They're acting like a human being who's confirmed they've understood what you've said.
If you were in that position and you were told to nod your head, guess what you're going to do? You're going to nod your head in that position. You're not going to sit up straight and nod your head. Oh, Alex, Jonathan, whatever you're going by these days, I want to thank you. We're at 55 minutes already.
Cool. Well, thank you. People, do listen to him. Go book your tickets.
Absolutely. PHS, make sure you grab your tickets. There's a link actually in the description. Magicalguru.com is where you can find lots of Alex's stuff for the lawsuit, Circus of the Mind, right?
Circusofthemind.net to see the lawsuit stuff. And if you want, it sounds arrogant, but I guarantee you nobody on the planet can offer you a more comprehensive training in stage hypnosis and hypnotherapy than you will find at ultimatehypnosiscourse.com. And I don't care if you've been in the industry for decades, unless you've done as many TV radio shows as me, unless you performed in front of as many capacity theatre crowds as me, and in the venues I've done them with celebrities, then the fact is you can't learn how to do those things. You have to go to the right teacher.
Yeah. Here's the truth, Alex. For years I was very worried about your stuff, because in your training materials, you're very there. You're really...
If you don't like swearing,
yeah,
it's going to upset you. If you don't like being told the truth and being told the fact that you've got, basically, as a hypnotist, even if you've been doing it for years, the chances are you've got next to no talent, unless you've actually bothered to learn marketing, advertising, publicity, and promotion, unless you've actually learned stagecraft, unless you've learned techniques that are taught to actors, unless you've learned elements of what would be classified as stand-up comedy. And it doesn't mean you have to go on and be hilarious, but you need to learn certain fundamentals to then start going into the category of being an entertainer. And from the therapeutic point of view, if you don't want to be told that it's all just a combination of the Pygmalion-Rosenthal effect, the Galatea effect, the Hawthorne effect, the totem effect, the halo effect, the placebo effect, and the nocebo effect, but together, meaning that hypnotherapy doesn't exist either, it's just a suggestion, then probably best that you don't go to ultimatehypnosiscourse.com. But if you don't, then you won't be able to join the people around the world who are headlining cruise ships, who are filling theatres, who have got their own TV shows, who therapeutically are treating celebrities and earning massive money going into corporations that I either originally taught, and it does sound arrogant, but I can prove, ultimatehypnosiscourse.com, the receipts, the proof, the evidence is there. Nobody who is alive at the moment, and that's the key, alive, because there's people who've left us who taught more, but they were older. Orman McGill, for example. Gil Boyne, for example, although as I'm only 50, I'd turn 50 in August. If I live as long as they did, fingers crossed, then I will break their record, I would hope. But of the people who are alive, nobody can teach you what I teach you. And nobody, different people can, but not all together, because they haven't done it. And bizarrely unique. And also, I've taught more people who are now successful stage hypnotists around the world than anyone else. And I either taught them from scratch or in an increasingly large number. Don't be ashamed, but if you do the research, you'll see testimonials on ultimatehypnosiscourse.com from people you'll go, they've been in the industry for like 20 years. Why have they only given Royle a testimonial like 5 years ago? Which bizarrely also coincides with when they started making it really big in the industry. Work it out for yourself.
It's absolutely true. Jonathan, thank you for being part of this.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for asking me. And
this is the first time we've actually ever talked. And
it is, yeah, live like this.
I've known about you for years, and I think I've messaged you privately a few times over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always been a pleasure to work with. And thank you. My initial training, it covered a lot of stuff, but your training, it added to that stuff as well. And to be honest, I'm not going to say I'm a success because of you, but you take a large part in some of that success. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, you never have one.
No.
And neither should you. That is I am not saying
a bad idea.
If you're a complete beginner, okay, who sees this, I'm not saying go to ultimatehypnosiscourse.com and join the Elite Hypnotherapy, NLP, Hypnosis, Stage Hypnosis, Street Hypnotism, Mentalism Bootcamp and just learn from me. I'm not. You should learn from people with differing views and experiences. Of course you should. But the beautiful thing is in the bootcamp you can, because there's 18 different teachers in it. There's not just stuff from me. There's stuff from people who totally, vehemently disagree with my point of view in there as well. But their ritualistic processes work for them and get them the same end result. But the reason I've included them in the bootcamp is because we do, even though we disagree on a lot of things, we agree on a middle ground, which is things should be done in a safe, legal, lawful manner.
That doesn't hurt the industry. That's the biggest one. Don't destroy the industry for other people.
And I know I look like the person who was giving the industry a bad name for many years, certainly in England. But, rewatch this interview and go and have a look at circusofthemind.net. And on the 20th of January, 2025, my new updated website will go on magicalguru.com, and I'll be able to, on there will be evidence and press cuttings and the truth behind the media pranks that will illustrate that I'm not actually the nasty person the media made me out to be. They lied. That's why it's cost them an awful lot of money. It's just it took decades to get the truth out, unfortunately.
It's funny. You look... Even from a few weeks ago, Jonathan, you look healthier. You look less stressed than you did on Joe Beth's podcast.
Do you know when there's a potential circumstance of getting a £10 million legal expenses bill, even though you've got insurance for most of it, there comes a point where they won't insure you. It can be quite stressful.
Anyway, we are at the very end. Everybody, PHS,
Cheers.
Check it out. Performing Hypnosis Summit. Check out Jonathan's stuff. I've got some links, magicalguru.com, circusofthemind.com, and what else?
Ultimatehypnosiscourse.com.
Okay.
And if you want free videos, there's free videos galore on my Celebrity Hypnotist YouTube channel. My final word is that thank you, Jesse, for having me. People watching this, if you've been to a PHS summit before, whether in person, online via Zoom, or just to lock in the low price right now to get access to the recordings, you'll already know the value. We don't need to sell it to you. Yeah. If you've not been before, this is different than other hypnosis conferences. And although you may be a therapist, you might be thinking, why do I want to learn about performing hypnosis? Remember, you are putting on a show for your one client in the one-to-one therapy room, or you're putting on a show, a performance, a narrative for the group of people when you do group therapy. And to break into things like the corporate arena, learning some of the entertainment skills, group management skills will help you as a therapist as well. It really will. Yeah. And also this is a great way, a lot of you will know the late Jim Kellner and know that as well as him doing stage hypnosis, big into helping people with life changes, with therapy, and loads of the conferences out there in America, very well known. This it's kind of going to be in his memory as well.
Yeah, kind of a swan song before everybody lets him go for the next year, right?
Yeah.
So it is unfortunate what happened to Jim. Everybody who watched, thank you very much. Jonathan, one final time, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to be doing these over the course of the year as well, because there's not enough of these going out. So I may invite you back sometime.
Excellent. So that
awesome.
would be great.
Thank you so much. And
enjoy your day, and thank you for doing this at 6 o'clock in the morning your time.
Thank you.